Sorry. At least you didn't have too much seal.
No, that's this is the pyramid. Solid man. I appreciate that. I'll put it in here. For those of you who don't know, all this work is letter-based, and the letters were written by my father, who's no longer with us, and who never gave his permission for the letters to be used. So ethically, I suppose there's a question there. But I did ask his best friend if it was, and he said that it was fine. He thought that my father came well out of it. And the reason he comes well out of it is that he could write. And although he was a working class guy, he lived in the north of England, and he lived in a town called Wallsend, which was primarily a shipbuilding and coal mining town. So it was no frills kind of town. And although he was a working class guy, he was very well educated. And although it was an industrial neighborhood, it was also sort of rural too. So he had this great feeling for the country, for birds, which he passed on to me. You know, the things that you get for nothing, nature. And he used to tell me that he could lie in bed when he was a kid and he could see the mushrooms that he was going to have for his breakfast before he got out of bed. You know, he could see them in the field and then he would go and pick them, which is not the way we live now, of course, but never mind. Anyway, I kept all his letters. We exchanged letters. I came here in the 80s, maybe the 70s, I don't know, it's a blur. But I was writing to him every week, 10 sides, 6 sides of foolscap. And so this was a dialogue between us. And I said to him, you keep those letters because I have a daughter, and also I wasn't keeping a diary at that time. So I had no record. You know, I thought they'd be useful to me, but of course he destroyed them all. So this is my revenge. And, well, he doesn't know about it, but one of the things that makes me interested in using letters and, you know, is the notion of calligraphy. And we now live in an age where I think probably in less than 10 years you won't see any message of this length written straight off the nervous system. You know, look at all these people in this room. I could give you a word to write, the word letter, and we could all write it down. We could look at it afterwards, and none of us would write it exactly the same way. It's as personal as the nose on your face. And you think of tagging, you know, this city's full of tags, saying who you are. When I was a kid, you know, I was very much interested in soccer and football, and we used to go to the grounds and we'd wait outside to see the players come out, and they'd write, you know. And so you'd go home and you would want to be a footballer, so you worked on your signature. And to this day, the way I make the J is the way I started to do it when I was 13. Because I was going to be a famous footballer. And you know, you had to do that. So the notion of calligraphy and drawing, it's very interesting to me. Because they take place in real time. We could sit down at the table and draw this scene. It would be busy, but we could draw it. One person could sit there and sketch it to the best of their ability. The other person could sit here and write for 10 minutes. But they'd both be making marks straight off the nervous system. Now that side of the process interests me. The fact that, you know, like for instance, my dad, there's a piece which is not in this exhibition, but it involves, I'll just put this here for a minute if you don't mind, but there's a piece that in which I used a letter that my dad wrote. So he's writing at the kitchen table, and he looks up, and he's looking into the garden, and he sees what he thinks is a wounded pigeon. And he's worried about it, because he thinks a cat might get it. Now, this is all in the letter. He gets up, he goes out, it's a paper bag. And he comes back, and he tells me that it's a paper bag. Now, this letter is in a painting. Now, to me, that's an interesting thing to have in a painting, because it's about perception. We all, you know, you're walking down the street, you think something's something, and then you find out that it's not. It's not the $20 bill that you thought it was. It's, you know, a chocolate wrapper or something. But it's about perception, you know, that you're hoping to see somebody, you're hoping to meet somebody. And the people who are coming towards you, is it, you know, you see, your imagination puts the face into the people coming towards you. This is about perception. So, to me, calligraphy and drawing are close. And in some of these works, see this one here, in the middle section, this is a letter that was written by an officer, and he was making a recommendation to me about my father, saying what a good man he was. Well, you can tell that this is a man of a superior caste, or a superior class, because it's flamboyantly written. It doesn't matter if you can read it or not, he's confident. And to me, that's close to, you know, you think of Chinese calligraphy, and it's closer to drawing to our eyes because we can't read it. But this is why I'm working the paint in here to make the space, because I want to bring out that that analogy between these two things. The other thing that drives me about this work is that, you know, we're now in an age where, you know, we're living. This is science fiction, the way we live now. You can have a life, you know, you can have a mistress, you can have a job, and you can do it all online. You know, you can have a whole other life, you can have a career, you can own a team, and you can buy players, and you can have a great life, and it's virtual. And I'm a big fan of the Housewives of Orange County. And I couldn't explain why, but I watch it every week, and it's a reality show. I guess it's different from the way I live, but this to me, see, my father, when he was writing these letters, this is unself-conscious writing, because I've made the decision to make them public. He didn't make that decision, but he was addressing me. But he was writing straight off the cuff. He wasn't thinking this is going to be in New York. You know, they're in Ireland, they're in England. The letters now are all over the place. There's a guy in our street, a doctor, who has a painting of mine, and he says people come in, you know, and they go, and they begin, and they're having a dialogue with a man who's dead. And he's addressing them. In none of these will you see, "Dear John," or will you see "Yours faithfully," because that, you see, that focuses it on me. Anybody who walks up to these, they can read it, and it's addressed to them. So this is my attempt to work with reality. You know, this is it's not virtual, it's his reality. And the thing about the narrative content is, you know, I mean, I know these inside out because I look at them all, you know, more than you do. But if you have one, and I urge you to take one home, you know, you have this thing in your house, and you're speaking with someone who's not there anymore. And that, to me, is an afterlife. It gives him a kind of afterlife. And he was a classy guy, but he wasn't a celebrity. And this is another thing that drives me, is that in society, there are all these people who are doing it, you know, just getting on with it. Nurses who change old people in hospitals and, you know, come in with a smile every day and do it, but nobody hears about them. And there's all these anonymous people living their lives heroically. Like, my dad lived in a community where, when my mother died, he never went without food. Not because he could, I mean, he could feed himself and he could cook and all the rest of it. Every day, the woman next door came in with quiche or soup. This is not the welfare service, this is not the social services. This is just people being the way they should be, looking after each other. And his culture was full of that. So there's a cast of characters in these letters, and they recur. The same people come in again and again. That is part of the rhythm of them. You know, he's going to the shops. Somebody pulls up in a car and gives him a ride. You never give anybody a ride now, because they might, you know, might put a hand on your knee or something. You know, you never know.